phrase in 10 or less. This is the show where I give it to you in 10 minutes or under, and if I don't, we'll try that again. Anyway, it's not your job to convince people why they should buy your book, but it is your job to tell a damn good story. That's the topic of the day. I'm Sam the Crazy Man Vera. Stop acting up. Let's get it. All right. So, why this topic? I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of debate on how to sell and market your book, and a lot of begging and pleading on social media why you should get my book. How come people are not backing my book? I worked hard. I worked with a lot of artists. Why aren't you backing my book? Why aren't you backing my book? Why aren't you backing my book? So people do a lot of bells and whistles, and they add all these things, and maybe if I do a pin, maybe if I do a figure, maybe if I do a plushie, maybe if I do 50 covers, maybe if I do this, I'll get people to back it. But that defeats the purpose of why you got into this arena in the first place. And when I say arena, I mean the creative arena, right? So why are you telling a story? Why do you want to tell a story? Was it because you're looking to have become an overnight success? Or is it because you really are passionate about the product, the story that you want to tell? You're really passionate about the characters that you invented, that you created here. You're really passionate about just wanting to complete something for self-fulfillment. Or are you chasing like everyone else? Right? So there's a caveat to this, right? As an independent, you eventually have to promote. But the convincing should be on the quality of the storytelling. The convincing should be on the love and passion that you put into your project. The next step would be the hook, right? The hook that's going to draw some intrigue, some interest, right? Some curiosity into, what is that about, right? But the hook comes after the project is complete. The hook comes after you spent hours and days and weeks and months and years on fleshing out this world that you're building, right? The drafts, the rough drafts, the conversations, if you're working with an artist or if you're doing it yourself, all the conversations around the look and the feel, the timeline, the research. If you're doing something that's historical, if you're doing something that's relevant, if you're doing something that's centered in a metro area, you have to learn what the topography looks like, what the architecture looks like, what the environment looks like, the lighting, all these things that you have to take into consideration when you're trying to create a world that will hopefully lure people into this environment and they feel like they have become engulfed in this journey and experience that you're creating for them or for yourself, right? So the idea of putting the carriage before the horse is a huge problem for aspiring creatives who don't have the capital to market or are not published by a mainstream publisher, because you feel these publishers have professionals, experts, people that they hire with specific degrees or experience to be able to tackle those specific topics. Someone who's going to, the branding division, the PR division, the marketing division, right? Those people are there specifically to really create the perfect package to put out into the market, right? So they really spend a lot of time and investment. You don't have that. We don't have that luxury, right? So where should the effort be placed? The effort should be placed, in my opinion, on the story. The stories, in my opinion, is the most important part, before the art, right? Because if you nail down the story and you have a compelling story, whether you're writing drama, fiction, science fiction, fantasy, you know, comedy, that is the most important part of the product development stage, right? So it's, what is it about? What's the purpose? Who's the main character? Who's the antagonist? Who's the protagonist? What's going on? Why should I care? Right? So, my humble opinion, and this is one man's opinion, so you take it for what it is that you do everything in your power to make sure that when you're done, you have no regrets. When you're done with your product, you have no regrets. Now, what happens when the product is over? Right? When you've completed the project, it's done. What's the next thing you should do? Work on your hook, right? And the hook is the most important part, right? And then in order to create a good hook, it's how do you identify what are the most interesting points in your story? What are the selling points? What are the things that might create the biggest interest in your product? You know, are there plot twists, right? You know, is it hilarious? Should the word comedy be placed in your tagline? If it's drama, suspenseful, you know, huge keywords, right? Those trigger words, right? That are going to stop people in their tracks and going to say, oh, wait, what is this about? Right? So, what are those words? The only way to come up with a good hook, it's almost like creating your elevator pitch, is trial and error. I can tell you right now, Forbidden had about 12, 25 different hooks that I've written over the years until I've landed on where I wanted it to land. So did Duty, right? Trying to figure out what's going to captivate the audience, what's going to get their attention the most, all those things. Because you don't know until you put it out there and you see what the reaction is. So once your product is done, now you want to be able to create a tagline, because on social media, it's about those little snippets, those little moments, right? It's what are the amount of characters that you have that's going to quickly draw my attention to what you're trying to promote. Because at the same time, that hook, when you put it out into the universe, if you have an ISBN number or barcode and you're trying to get into Library of Congress and all this other stuff and get into the database, the reviewers are going to look at that hook and determine whether or not they're interested in your product. They're determining not if they want to do a review of your book or they want to promote it, right? So that's the next phase, right? Work on your story, work on your hook. Finish the story first before you work on the hook. Test the hook. Just like you test covers, right? You put out covers and say which cover is most appealing. Get some feedback, right? Do focus groups. If you really want to secure your legacy as a creative, then do the things that's not going to cost you much. Focus groups, you can get families and friends, neighbors, and set up a barbecue and just say, hey, and have a whiteboard and then put up all your covers and say, which one would you be most attracted to, right? And to get different age groups. Same thing with your hook. Which one do you think is going to be the one that's going to get your attention the most? If you're really serious about that, you'll take those steps. The great thing about what interviewing on Cast the Craze podcast is that lately we've had a bunch of indie creators that are new to the game that are doing all the right things. They're doing all the right things. They're putting the character development, the storylines, the plots before anything else. They're really, really taking all those lessons learned that they've heard on different podcasts or by talking to editors or whatever it is. Whatever they learned throughout their journey, they're applying it. So kudos to all you guys and girls out there for doing the right thing. Because the investment you make today is going to have a lasting impact on where you go tomorrow. So that's my opinion on this whole thing. Don't go out there and be a salesman. Be a storyteller. Be a storyteller. What do you think about this episode? Do you have an opinion? Let me know. If you like this episode, give me a thumbs up. If you have a comment, any feedback, put it in the comments below. If you want me to get more in depth on this, we can do it on Cast the Craze podcast. Either way. But don't forget, hey, A Kid in a Comic, Duty is a comic strip. Duty is a comic strip. He's in A Kid in a Comic, published by akidinacomic.com and hitting local stores, and it's available for subscription. You can actually bypass the stores and have this delivered to your home. You get not only Duty, but you get tons and tons and tons of other comic strips by industry veterans and new and up and coming creatives as well. So kidinacomic.com, you can get this delivered to your home 7 times a year. And visit dutiesworld.com for all your Duty adventures. You want a commission piece, you want one of my books, everything's available on my website, dutiesworld.com. And don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, share button. With that said, I'm Sam the Crazy Man Vera. This is the Crazy Tale Less. You guys have a blessed day. Peace.